Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, Nas Reed wins the NBA Sixth Man of the Year award, plus what Cat and Ant did well in Game 2. I know they didn't score a ton of points, but they each did some good things in the Wolves win. Plus, we'll talk about an ownership update as well. It's all upcoming. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to us by Monopoly Go. I'll admit it, I have a competitive side. Who doesn't? It's my competitive side that was a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. Join your friends and download Monopoly Go now, free on the App Store or Google Play. Happy Thursday, everybody. Tomorrow is Game 3 of the series back in Phoenix, another 2-day break for the Wolves. And I want to talk a little bit more about Game 2 today, specifically about Cat and Ant. We have to lead with Nas Reed, so we'll get to that as well. Lots to get to here today. A big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms, as well as on Locked On Sports Minnesota on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. More great local sports coverage 24/7 for free. You can download the Locked On Sports Minnesota app today. Again, both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. You can also follow the show on X at Locked On T-Wolves and also at Beecken. That's with two B's, two E's, CKEN. All right. I have Nas second on the graphic there on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, but I'm just going to open with that because Nas is second to nobody. He's first in the NBA's Sixth Man of the Year voting. And I didn't talk a lot about this when I ran through the awards finalists. I think it was Monday maybe on the show. And I just kind of like listed who I thought should win each award. And yeah, I think Nas should have won Sixth Man of the Year. According to the NBA PR team, this was actually the closest voting we've ever had for a Sixth Man of the Year award since they've had the voting formatted this way. Nas ended up with, I believe, 2 more first place votes, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see if I can find it real quick. They both had the same number of second and third place votes, but Nas had 2 more first place votes, which means he won by 10 points in the way the voting scoring works. So just edging out Malik Monk of the Sacramento Kings. And Malik Monk's great and certainly deserving of being a finalist for this award. I don't know, other than the fact that he didn't start a single game, why one would argue for him over Nas Reed. This is the year 2024, so we're not just like rating guys based on points per game. Are people still doing that? I think people may do that, but they shouldn't do that. So if we're doing that, then yeah, Malik Monk scored 15.4 points per game, and Nas scored a 13.5. Oh, and Nas started 14 games, and Malik Monk didn't start any, so maybe he's a better. No, it doesn't matter. Nas Reed was obviously he was a primary bench player. He only started when Karl-Anthony Towns was out. I don't even think he started when Rudy missed a couple of games. I'm pretty sure that Kyle Anderson started those games. So, and even when Cat got hurt, the first reaction was to start slow-mo. It wasn't to start Nas Reed. So Nas was the definition of a sixth man, in that the Wolves even tried to keep him in that six-man role. So if we want to talk semantics about this, yeah, he started 14 games. He also came off the bench for 67 games in this season. And yeah, he averaged a couple points per game less than Malik Monk. He also averaged less minutes per game, right? Because we're not ranking guys we're not evaluating players by points per game, remember? Also, Malik Monk, just 35% from 3 on 6 attempts per game. Nas was 41.4% from 3 on 5 attempts per game. No matter how you slice it, no matter how you dice it, Nas has a better effective field goal percentage. All the advanced metrics would prefer Nas's season to Malik Monk's. I'm not really sure what the argument is other than more points per game in more minutes per game, which is also an argument against Tyrese Maxey winning most improved player, but I'm not going to talk through that now. So Nas was absolutely deserving. He should have won this award. And I'm a little surprised it was as close as it was. I thought he was going to win, and I thought it would be relatively close. I didn't think it would be the closest vote ever. Bobby Portis finished third in six-man voting. He finished third last year as well. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. And I'm fine having Monk ahead of Portis. Although, I don't know. I would argue, I don't, I'd maybe argue for Portis over Malik Monk too. I don't know. Malik Monk is a good player and I like him, but I don't want to sound like I'm Malik Monk bashing here. 15 points a game off the bench is not nothing. And he was on a pretty good Sacramento team. But the problem is he didn't shoot the ball well enough for what that role is. And Sacramento wasn't good enough. And Nas Reed contributed more to winning for Minnesota. And I thought he had a more well-rounded, better season than Malik Monk and was absolutely deserving of the award. Now he's got a couple of years left on this deal that he just re-signed. That, like, I was worried last offseason about the Wolves paying him too much money and not carving out a role. They found a role for Nas Reed, and he was worth every penny of that contract. In a season, remember last year when Cat missed, what did he miss? 60-some games, 61 games or something last season? Nas only averaged 18 minutes per game. I was worried. I said last offseason, hey, if Cat's out and Nas has only played 18 minutes a game, how are you going to pay him this much money and play him with a healthy Rudy and a healthy Cat? They found a way to do it. I was 100% wrong about overpaying Nas. Although I will say, after they did do the contract, I liked the contract because I thought it was good value, right? It was better than he would have gotten on the open market. So I actually, while I was cautiously optimistic they'd retain him, like going back a year ago, late April, early May, I was worried they would overpay him. As it turned out, it was good value because my take the whole time was, if this doesn't work out, you can trade Cat or you could trade Nas. They're both tradable. And if it does work out, it's a really good value for Nas Reed. So I was glad they got him for the price they did. And I'm a big Nas Reed fan. And I think in the role he's in now, he's just such a phenomenal piece for this team. I'd been worried about his rebounding in the past, but hey, if he's not going to play the 5 with no other bigs, it's less of a big deal, right? He also found a way to still, have the ball in his hand. He really turned into just like a spot up shooter where if guys tried to, run out at him, he would put the ball on the floor, not quite in the same way as Cat. And what I always have said about Nas since they, got him 5 years ago now was, if he could be a reasonable facsimile of Karl-Anthony Towns off the bench, that's what the Wolves are looking for. That's still true to an extent, but there's obviously things about his game that are very different. And also the way he defends. Both are impactful defenders. They defend differently than one another. Nas is more about length and athleticism. Cat's more about positioning, size, and weirdly enough, like just being in the right place at the right time, which I wouldn't have said about Cat a couple of years ago. And Nas has improved dramatically too when it comes to that as well. But offensively, Nas improved his 3-point rate dramatically and improved his 3-point percentage by almost 7 percentage points this year over what he'd done each of the last 2 seasons, effectively pulling his career 3-point percentage up like 6% because of the volume and the rate at which he shot it. I was worried about Nas Reed at, whatever million a year shooting 34% from 3 because what's the value there? But he shot the ball so well from 3 and improved defensively that it made the contract worth every penny. All right. Congrats to Nas Reed for winning 6th Man of the Year. Absolutely deserved. Malik Monk probably deserved to get the second in the voting. I don't know why it was as close as it was, but let's celebrate Nas for what he did. And hopefully he's been relatively quiet outside of that one incredible drive he had in game 1, but pretty quiet through the first 2 games of the playoffs. I don't think that will be the case for the remainder of the playoffs. We'll have a couple of big Nas games mixed in there, and hopefully it's soon. It'd be fun to have a further national coming out party for Nas Reed. Now on the heels of him winning this award and getting even more national recognition. All right, let's talk Cat. Let's talk Ant. I want to talk about what they each did well in game 2. I hardly talked about them at all on the post-game pod because there's so much other stuff to talk about with Jaden and Rudy Gobert and the Wolves defense as a whole. But I want to talk about Cat and Ant and their games in game 2, and then we'll get to a little bit of ownership stuff here at the end of the show. All that's upcoming next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers. Do you watch Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day long? If so, no doubt you have to turn down the volume because of all the shouting. Instead, make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, let's talk Cat. Let's talk Ant. Both quiet in game two. Both quiet in game two, offensively at least. Cat had 12 and 8. He shot just 3 of 7. Ant had 15, 8 and 5, shot just 3 of 12. Now, those lines I just read actually do allude to some of the good things they did, right? Shooting the basketball, they combined to make just 6 shots. They were 6 of 19. So below 33% from the field, which is like, if you had said that, you'd be like, all right, well, the Wolves lost the game. Maybe they won a close one, if other guys stepped up. No, they won by 12. There was garbage time in this playoff game because the Wolves played so well collectively. Let's start with Cat because he got into foul trouble very early. He picked up his 3rd foul in the first quarter. I know Charles Barkley was very critical of Chris Finch for having Cat on the floor. He likes to be critical. Barkley likes to be critical of Finch. You could argue that, sure. But my thing with foul trouble, I don't want to get on too big of a soapbox here, but my thing has always been the minutes matter as much now as they do later. And if you're not in the game later, then what happens now doesn't matter. Or let me say that a different way. If you're not in the game later, then it doesn't matter what happens later, right? So if you take, my thing with foul trouble has always been, and I don't know that it was this drastic with Cat because obviously the Wolves have other good players and they did survive without him in the second quarter. But especially, like, I always think this in college when, like, you've got one superstar player on a team. If you take the guy out because of foul trouble, but then you get down by 12, like, what are the odds you're going to come back anyway later? Right? It's kind of like in baseball. If you save your closer for the end of the game, if you're a baseball fan and you save your closer, your best pitcher for the end of the game, regardless if it's a 1, 2, or 3 run lead. Well, if you're behind by 5 at the end of the game because you put in a worse pitcher in the 7th inning, it doesn't matter that you saved your guy. It's the exact same thing in basketball. What is happening now matters more. You can have a plan for later, but leave your best players on the floor as much as possible. Now that's within reason and it's situational. Again, the matchup matters. The quality of player and the other players on the team matter. And Finch's calculus here was like, hey, Cat's doing a good job on Kevin Durant. Although I think Durant might have come back in the game toward the end of the first quarter. I think he had a rest and came back. But the calculus was, let's leave him in the game and he's going to get his rest in the second quarter either way. This just meant he had to rest the rest of the second quarter with the 3 fouls. And of course, he only picked up 1 foul in the entire second half. He still ended up only playing 24 minutes, but I get why he was on the floor. All that to say, Cat was doing a really good job defensively on Kevin Durant before he got into foul trouble. I was impressed with the defense Towns played. And as I said on I think it was Monday's show, it's pick your poison. Is Cat going to shut Durant down the majority of the time? Probably not. But who is? Right? Part of the calculus here for the Wolves is if you put McDaniels on Durant, Durant's going to draw more fouls just because of the advantage he has in size and length and frankly, even physicality over Jaden McDaniels, and certainly guile, craftiness, etc. He's more likely, believe it or not, to get McDaniels in foul trouble than Karl-Anthony Towns. And frankly, the Wolves would rather have Karl-Anthony Towns in foul trouble in this series than Jaden McDaniels because McDaniels' defense is so valuable on Devin Booker. And really anybody, Booker, Beal, or Durant, but the best matchup for him is Booker to bother him with his length. The Wolves have basically neutralized Bradley Beal with Anthony Edwards. And so that's allowed Cat to guard Durant. And if Durant drops 30 plus 31 or whatever he had in game 1, fine, as long as Beal and Booker aren't doing anything. That's okay. At least Cat's making him work, right? So that's the idea. And Cat did a really good job. The other thing with Cat is in the third quarter of this game, this got entirely overlooked because of all the stuff I talked about on the post-game pod on Wednesday. And I'm not saying I shouldn't have done, like, the focus should have been on Rudy, on Jaden McDaniels, the Wolves' collective defense, and their job as a team to win with Cat in foul trouble, with Ant having an off night shooting. And I talked a little about Mike Conley, but between Jaden, Rudy, Conley's night, it was easy to overlook what Karl-Anthony Towns did in the third quarter of this game. Minnesota was down by 3 with 9 minutes left in the third quarter, and Karl-Anthony Towns scored 8 straight for the Wolves. Or excuse me, he scored, I take that back. He scored, if I can do math. No, it was 8 straight. Yeah, he had an and one, he had a three-pointer, and then he had that was the three-pointer that, this was right before he took the heat check after making just 1 3, and then he took the crazy 3, and then the Suns hit a couple of threes, and then it was timeout Finch, and I talked about this on Wednesday show. Good timing of the timeout by Finch, and from that point forward, the Wolves pretty much dominated. But what led into that, and I think got lost because of the quick 6-0 Suns run after this, was Cat's 8 points. He went on an 8-2 run himself. He made a couple of free throws after Nurkic fouled him. Nurkic scored on the other end. Then Cat comes down, gets an and one, foul on Royce O'Neal. After a missed 3 from Beal, Cat comes down and hits that 3 in transition after an Ant rebound. Ant pushes the pace, gets the assist to Cat. That's 8 points in a minute and 2 seconds from Karl-Anthony Towns. Just an absolute flurry. What did he score for the game? 12, I think. Yeah, he scored 8 of his 12 points in 1 minute and 2 seconds of the third quarter. And it was huge. It got the Wolves from 3 down to 3 up. And yes, the Suns went on a quick 6-0 run of their own, but then that led to a Wolves timeout. And then the Wolves, for the rest of the quarter, I think it was a 12-2 run, or maybe it was 16-4 over the course of the rest of the quarter, something like that. And the Wolves were now up 7 going to the fourth. But it was all keyed by that run from Karl-Anthony Towns, where he was the Wolves offense. And given how much he struggled he didn't really struggle that much as he was in foul trouble, and struggled a little bit in game 1 offensively, that was huge from Karl-Anthony Towns. So I didn't want to completely gloss over what he was able to provide. And also 24 minutes, and he still pulled down, what do you have, 8 rebounds in the game? Yeah, 8 rebounds in 24 minutes. That was tied for second on the Wolves, would have been second on the Suns. In a game the Wolves were out rebounded by 2. They allowed 11 offensive rebounds. What Cat was able to do when he was on the floor on the glass was really good. He also got to the line 5 times. And that was a big part in game 1. Remember, he didn't do much from the floor, but that second quarter in game 1, he got to the line. I think 6 of his 8 free throws were in the second quarter. For the series, Cat is 13 for 13 from the line across the 2 games, which has been super important. So, like, the numbers don't pop off the page, right? Was he have 31 points, 15 rebounds through 2 games? I mean, there's people that may want to see that from Cat in 1 game. But if he, I mean, like, you're going to want him to average more than, 15 and 8 probably over the course of the playoffs. But the Wolves have won these games comfortably, and Cat has contributed. He's been a plus player in both games. I know technically plus minus, he was a negative player in game 1, but overall, he's been a positive player for Minnesota. Outside of a couple stray voltage moments, he's been really composed overall. And kind of an unsung, weirdly enough, because it's easy to say, they're winning without their stars scoring. But Cat's played well. Just like, and we're going to get to Ant in a second. Ant played well in game 2. He just didn't shoot the ball that well. So I want to talk a little bit about Ant's shot selection in game 2 and what he ended up contributing positively. We'll close with some quick ownership stuff. We'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is sponsored by BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest, big or small. Certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased on your life. So today I want to say how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking about the same thing this week. And that is, well, we already talked about this, but it's the Nas Reed thing. It's the 6th man of the year thing. I get that I'm griping about a Nas Reed win, but he should have been the consensus 6th man of the year. And I think, at least I got the vibe from a lot of national people that he should have won it. And he did, but it was a little closer than I expected. Like, again, better efficiency, better all-around game, certainly better shooting from outside the arc, and the ability to step in and start if he needs to, but still a bench player first, a 6-man first for a better team. Nas Reed absolutely deserved to win the 6-man player of the year award. And look, therapy looks different for everyone, and I'm sure that many people have bigger problems than our favorite sports team's player winning or not winning 6th man of the year. We've talked about coach of the year award, same deal. But no matter what, it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Today's episode is also brought to us by our friends at DoorDash. Shop with savings this Mother's Day that would make her proud. With the Dash Pass membership, you'll save with a $0 delivery fee and reduced service fees on eligible orders from Dash Pass merchants that meet the minimum subtotal, while other fees, including service fees, apply. Of course, terms apply as always. And look, this Mother's Day, just get something thoughtful for mom on DoorDash. Surprise her from wherever you are with fresh bouquets, the latest tech, gift cards, self-care treats, and more to make her day that much better. If your mom has a sweet tooth or is a tech enthusiast, a beauty connoisseur, maybe she's outdoorsy, no matter what she's into, you can make her smile with a fruit or flower bouquet, makeup, tech gear, workout wear, and more. Pair flowers with the gift card so she can celebrate any way she wants. She's a bookworm. You can go bookstore gift card. You could also go a latte, a gift card to her favorite coffee shop. You can't go wrong. Get thoughtful gifts she deserves with the convenience you need. Choose same-day delivery or schedule a week ahead for when flowers and gifts should arrive to her door with DoorDash. Get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA. Order using DoorDash today. Again, $15, up to $15 on your order, 50% off that order as long as you're spending at least $15. Flowers, convenience, grocery, retail order, whatever you want over at DoorDash. Again, code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. All right. Anthony Edwards. The Ants headline, of course, is the 3 of 12 shooting. And this is on the heels of the 18 points he scored in the third quarter of the game one win. He was 14 and 24 in that game. He scored 33, had 9.6 assists. Yeah, he had a bunch of turnovers, 6 total in game one, 4 of them coming in the first quarter. That was the only blemish in that game. He's been great defensively in both games as really a primary defender on Bradley Beal. I mean, Beal was what? 6 of 10 in game one for 15 points. 6 of 17 in game two for 14 points. Anthony Edwards has done a number on Bradley Beal, and the Wolves defense as a whole has. As far as Ants offense goes, he shot only 3 of 12, but he had 8 assists to only 3 turnovers in this game. His decision-making was on point. He was driving and kicking. He was getting a pass, taking a couple of hard dribbles, and swinging the ball. He was making quick decisions. It wasn't, there was, 1 or 2 poorish possessions mixed in there. But for the most part, it was, I'm going to catch, I'm going to take a couple hard dribbles, I'm going to swing it, make the right basketball play. He just wasn't, he hasn't been able to penetrate into the paint. He hasn't been able to get deep enough into the Suns defense because of them putting 2+ on the ball every single time down the floor. You look at Ant's shot chart from game 2, he didn't make a single shot in the paint, which is crazy. Not a single shot in the paint. He only made 3 shots for the game. 2 were threes, and 1 was that long 2 he hit over Durant that led to the Phoenix timeout that everybody, the crossover that he hit, long 2 from above the left side of the lane. He only attempted 2 field goals in the paint in this game. Now, he went to the line a couple times or a few times. What did he have? Like 8 free throws or something in this game? 8 free throw attempts, 7 of 8 from the line. So he only ended up with 2 actual field goal attempts in the paint. Both were misses. He only had 3 non-paint 2-point attempts. Of his 12 shot attempts, 6 of them were from outside the arc. So he was 1 of 5 on 2s. He was 2 of 6 on 3s. And I'm not saying that to rip on his shot attempts or his shot selection. I'm just saying that to kind of underline the way that the Suns are playing him defensively. Now, that's in contrast to game 1 when Ant had, what did he shoot in the paint? I think it was 4 of 8, either 4 of 8 or 5 of 8 in the paint in game 1. And he also was like, I think it was 4 of 7 on non-paint 2s. So his shot chart was all over the place in game 1. Game 2, it was just a lot more limited and a lot more skewed toward the 3-point line because he was taking what the defense gave him. Now, game 1, Phoenix's defense completely fell apart in quarter 3. That didn't necessarily happen until a little bit later in this game, and it happened more in the fourth quarter when Ant was on the bench in game 2. So this was more Ant made the right basketball play because the Suns were loading up on him. And outside of the 3 for 12, I actually thought Ant's decision-making and overall offensive game were really good. Feels so weird to say about a guy that scored 15 on 12 shots, but the decision-making was sound. He also pitched in defensively 5 rebounds and 3 steals in this game, plus a block, that block he had at the end of the shot clock in the second half. So a well-rounded Ant game. The decision-making was very good, and sometimes the shots don't fall. And I would expect him to certainly have a better game in game 3. I mean, his, of course, playoff scoring average, everybody's talked about that, nationally, like going back to the last couple of years. He's been awesome in the playoffs. And so you'd expect him to start scoring. But between the 2 games, he now has 14 assists. He has 9 turnovers, but 6 of them came in game 1. He's also got 6 stocks between the 2 games. If Ant's going to average 3 stocks a game and average 7 assists a game, it's over. I'm sorry. Like, if Ant's doing that, he's going to break out like he did in game 1 every now and again. And there was a national, I think it might have been Bill Simmons said this on the show, I guess would have been Wednesday's show in his pod. He was talking about how Anthony Edwards having a breakout game is almost like a luxury for Minnesota now. And it really is, because if Ant's going to score that much like that, then it's over, right? Like, nobody's going to beat you if Ant's going to score 33 and have an 18-point quarter, because everything else should go okay. Like, if your defense is the way that it was for, 80% of Wolves games this year, like, it's lights out. I mean, it's over for the other team. It really is a luxury to have Ant have the ability to go off in that way. All right, completely shifting gears, because we also have Friday's show before Friday night's game 3 in Phoenix. So we'll preview Friday night, what to expect, potential adjustments again for both teams. We'll talk about that on Friday's show. So I want to close with some quick ownership stuff. And this kind of has trickled out the last couple of days. So rewinding a little bit, it came out on, was it Tuesday, that there was a mediation scheduled for May 1st. And the way that works between the Lori Rodriguez group and the Taylor group is that it's a 3-person board. Each party chooses one person to sit on the board. And then there's like somebody that both sides agree on together. And there's a couple things that came out that were pretty interesting. So real quickly, there's a report from Joe Pompliano of Huddle Up, and it's a paywall deal, so I don't want to like read anything verbatim, but basically he talks about how Lori Rodriguez actually would have had more ownership stake in the team than Glenn Taylor, except for that Glenn Taylor bought nearly 3% from a different partner, from one of the limited partners. Remember, the whole deal was together they were going to own like close to 80%, Taylor and then Lori Rodriguez. But then the other 20 was still minority shareholders. Well, Taylor bought nearly 3% from a different limited partner to boost what he would have had, which was just 36%, up to, or excuse me, I guess he would have been down to like 33%, 33, 34%. And Lori Rodriguez they currently have 36%. So they actually would have been majority owners, but Taylor bought this 3% to boost himself up over Lori Rodriguez once again. So he owns roughly 1% more than Lori Rodriguez do right now. And together they're like in the low, like 73, 74% owned of the team. And the rest of it is owned by these limited partners still. So that's interesting. Kind of a sneaky move by Glenn Taylor, but I mean, what do you expect from Glenn Taylor, right? So other stuff in there, stuff we've heard before, that Lori Rodriguez were the driving force behind Connolly and driving force behind signing off on the Gobert trade. We'll see. The only thing that's really kind of come out that seems negative about Lori Rodriguez, besides the fact that they may or may not have actually had the money, although they say that they do / did, is the idea that they submitted a budget for next year, a projected budget and payroll that would show the Wolves below luxury tax, which means that they're moving pieces, right? Pompliano said in his article that those types of things change relatively frequently, that lots of team owners will submit lower projections and revise them, especially if the team is good in the playoffs. So given all that, like, I don't know that we necessarily need to look at that as a clear negative for Lori Rodriguez, just something to be aware of. So all that to say, this is just another kind of twist and turn. It's so weird that this is happening kind of in the wake of everything else that's super positive. And like, we're only a week away from this mediation session, and the Wolves are going to be either hopefully not still playing in the first round, but closing out that series or moving on to round 2 in the midst of this. And you've still got the Taylors sitting directly across the court from Lorian Rodriguez. Just a weird thing that's happening. Thankfully, it doesn't seem to be affecting Finch and the players. And Finch said as much when this stuff broke a few weeks ago. So all that to say, something to keep an eye on here as a bit of a sideshow as we work through the postseason. All right. That's all we have for you today. As I mentioned earlier, we'll preview the game on Friday. So lots to get to on Friday's show still. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere, including YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And you can follow on X at Locked On T-Wolves and also at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.